Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the battlecruiser Defiance Edge, staring at the distress signal that had just appeared on her screens. The message was weak and broken, but she could make out enough words to understand what was happening. "Help us, New Terra Colony. They say they are gods. Please." Sarah turned to her communications officer. "How far is New Terra from our current position?" 2 days at maximum speed, Captain," Lieutenant Hayes replied. "It's supposed to be in neutral space according to our charts." Sarah frowned. New Terra was a mining colony established by humans 3 years ago. They had gone there to dig for rare metals that Earth needed for its growing space fleet. The colony was small, maybe 2,000 people, mostly miners and their families. "Set course for New Terra," Sarah ordered. "Maximum speed." The Defiance Edge was one of Earth's newest and most powerful warships. It was 800 meters long and carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Sarah had commanded it for 2 years, and her crew trusted her completely. They had fought pirates and hostile aliens before, but something about this distress call felt different. Dr. Marcus Webb, the ship's science officer, walked onto the bridge. He was a tall man with gray hair and sharp blue eyes. "Captain, I've been analyzing the signal. There are some strange energy readings mixed in with the message." "What kind of energy readings?" Sarah asked. "I'm not sure. It's unlike anything in our databases. The energy patterns are very complex, almost like they're alive." Sarah looked at the main screen, which showed the stars streaming past as they traveled toward New Terra. "How long until we arrive?" 36 hours, her pilot replied. "Good. Dr. Webb, I want you to prepare full sensor sweeps when we get there. Something tells me we're going to need all the information we can get." The next day and a half passed slowly. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were heading into something bigger than a simple rescue mission. She had her crew run weapons checks and battle drills just in case. When they finally arrived at New Terra, Sarah gasped at what she saw. The colony was still there, but it looked completely different. Strange glowing towers had been built around the mining facilities. The towers pulsed with bright blue light that seemed to move like liquid. "Captain," Dr. Webb said, his voice filled with amazement, "I'm reading massive energy signatures from those towers. The power levels are off the charts. Are the colonists alive?" Sarah asked. "Yes, I'm detecting human life signs, but they're all gathered in one area, near the center of the colony." Sarah ordered her ship to move closer. As they approached, she could see thousands of humans kneeling on the ground in front of a massive glowing figure. The figure was at least 20 feet tall and seemed to be made of pure light. It floated above the ground, and smaller glowing beings surrounded it. "Captain," Lieutenant Hayes said, his voice shaking, "we're receiving a transmission from the colony." "Put it on screen." The face of James Morrison, the colony administrator, appeared on the main screen. But he looked different. His eyes were wide and filled with a strange kind of joy. His voice was calm, almost dreamy. "Captain Chen, welcome to New Terra. We are blessed to be in the presence of the divine Etherian collective. They have come to guide us to a higher existence." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Mr. Morrison, what happened here?" "We received a distress signal." Morrison smiled. "That was before we understood. The Etherians are gods, Captain. They have shown us wonders beyond imagination. They can heal the sick, control matter itself, and they live forever. We are honored to serve them." Before Sarah could respond, the transmission changed. The glowing figure that had been floating above the colonists now filled the screen. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I am High Arbiter Zephix of the Etherian Collective. You command this primitive vessel, human?" It wasn't a question. Sarah straightened her shoulders and looked directly at the being on her screen. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth battlecruiser Defiance Edge. These people sent a distress signal. We're here to help them." The being that called itself Zephix seemed to find this amusing. "Help them? We have already helped them, little human. We have given them purpose. They mine the crystals we need, and in return we protect them from the chaos of mortal existence. They're not slaves," Sarah said firmly. "They're free people with the right to choose their own path." Zephix's laughter was like thunder. "Right? Choice? These are concepts invented by mortals who do not understand their place in the universe. We are the Etherian Collective. We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 of your years. We are immortal, all-powerful, and divine. Your species exists because we allow it." Sarah felt her anger rising, but she kept her voice steady. "And what if we choose not to bow down to you? Then you will learn why countless civilizations across the galaxy worship us as gods. You have 24 of your hours to bring your ship down to the planet's surface and submit to our divine will. If you refuse, we will demonstrate our power in ways that will make your people beg for death." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah and her crew staring at a blank screen. "Captain," Dr. Webb said quietly, "those energy readings I detected earlier. They're getting stronger. Whatever these Etherians are, they have technology far beyond anything we've ever seen." Sarah turned to face her senior staff. "Options?" Chief Engineer Rosa Vasquez spoke first. "We could try to fight them, but honestly, Captain, I don't think our weapons would even scratch beings made of pure energy." Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka, the tactical officer, shook her head. "We have no data on their capabilities. For all we know, they could destroy us with a thought." "What about the colonists?" Sarah asked. "Can we evacuate them?" "Not all of them," Dr. Webb said. "Our transport capacity is limited, and something tells me these Etherians won't just let us take their workforce." Sarah walked to the forward windows and looked down at the planet. She could see the glowing towers and the humans still kneeling before their supposed gods. Everything in her training told her to call for backup, to retreat and return with a full fleet. But she knew that by the time help arrived, it might be too late for the colonists. "Dr. Webb," she said, turning back to her science officer, "I want you to run every scan we have on these Etherians. Find out everything you can about how they work. If they're really gods, then we're in trouble. But if they're just very advanced aliens, you think they might not be as powerful as they claim?" Dr. Webb asked. "I think that anyone who needs to call themselves a god and threaten people probably has something to hide. We have 24 hours. Let's use them wisely." Over the next several hours, Dr. Webb and his team worked around the clock to analyze the Etherians. They used every sensor the ship had, from basic electromagnetic scanners to advanced quantum detectors. What they found was both fascinating and disturbing. The Etherians were indeed made of energy, but it wasn't random energy. It was highly organized, almost like a computer program made of light. More importantly, the energy patterns seemed to be connected to something else, something that existed in dimensions beyond normal space. "Captain," Dr. Webb said, calling Sarah to the science lab, "I think I've found something important. These Etherians aren't just energy beings. They're connected to a vast network that spans multiple dimensions. It's like they're all parts of a single massive computer system." Sarah studied the data on Webb's screens. "What does that mean for us?" "Well, if they're part of a network, then they might have weaknesses that a truly divine being wouldn't have. Networks can be disrupted, connections can be severed. Can our weapons affect them?" Dr. Webb hesitated. "Not our conventional weapons, but we do have quantum computers on board that generate their own dimensional fields. If we could modify them." "Do it," Sarah said immediately. "Whatever you need, you have full access to ship resources." As Dr. Webb and Chief Engineer Vasquez worked on weapons modifications, Sarah found herself thinking about the colonists. James Morrison had seemed genuinely happy to serve the Etherians. But happiness and freedom weren't the same thing. She remembered something her grandfather had told her when she was young. He had fought in Earth's last great war, and he had seen what happened when people gave up their freedom for security. "The moment you stop fighting for what's right," he had said, "is the moment you stop being human." With 6 hours left until the deadline, Dr. Webb made a breakthrough. "Captain, I think I know why these Etherians have been so successful. They can predict the behavior of most species because most aliens think in predictable patterns. But humans, we're different." "Different how?" "Our brains work on quantum principles that create natural interference patterns. To put it simply, we're naturally chaotic in a way that their prediction systems can't handle. That's probably why they never conquered Earth directly." Sarah felt a spark of hope. "So they can't predict what we'll do?" "Not reliably. And that might be our only advantage." As the deadline approached, Sarah called her crew together. She looked at the faces of the men and women who had served with her through battles across the galaxy. They were scared, but they were ready. "In 4 hours, we have to give these Etherians an answer," she said. "They want us to kneel down and accept them as our gods. I don't know about you, but my grandfather didn't fight for human freedom just so I could hand it over to some glowing aliens." Her crew smiled grimly. They knew what she was going to say next. "We're going to fight. I won't lie to you. Our chances aren't good. But sometimes fighting isn't about winning. Sometimes it's about showing the universe that some things are worth dying for." Chief Engineer Vasquez raised her hand. "Captain, the weapon modifications are complete. We can't guarantee they'll work, but at least we'll go down swinging." "What are we calling this new weapon?" Sarah asked. Dr. Webb grinned. The Godbreaker. With 30 minutes left until the deadline, Sarah opened a communication channel to the planet's surface. High Arbiter Zephyx appeared on her screen, his glowing form radiating power and confidence. "Have you made your decision, little human?" he asked. Sarah stood straight and looked directly at the being that claimed to be a god. "We have. You want to know what makes humans different from all the other species you've conquered? We don't kneel. Not to kings, not to tyrants, and certainly not to false gods." Zephix's calm expression changed to one of rage. "False gods? You dare!" "You heard me. Real gods don't need to threaten people to get worship. They don't need to enslave miners to do their work. You're just bullies with fancy technology, and Earth doesn't negotiate with bullies." The communication ended abruptly. On the planet's surface, the glowing towers began to pulse faster and brighter. Energy readings spiked across all of Sarah's sensors. "All hands, battle stations," Sarah announced over the ship's communication system. "This is Captain Chen. Today we fight not just for ourselves, but for every free being in the galaxy. Show these false gods what humans are made of." The Defiance Edge powered up its weapons and turned to face the glowing figures rising from the planet's surface. The battle for humanity's freedom was about to begin. The first attack came without warning. A beam of pure white energy shot up from the planet's surface and struck the Defiance Edge along its port side. The entire ship shook as the energy tore through the outer hull like it was made of paper. "Damage report," Captain Sarah Chen shouted over the alarm sirens. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 9, Chief Engineer Rosa Vasquez replied from her station. "Emergency force fields are holding, but barely." Sarah gripped her command chair as another energy beam lanced past the ship, missing them by only a few hundred meters. On the main screen, she could see dozens of glowing figures rising from the planet's surface, their bodies blazing like miniature suns. "Dr. Webb, please tell me you have some good news about these creatures," Sarah said. Dr. Webb was hunched over his science station, his fingers flying across the control panels. "I'm getting more detailed readings now that they're using their weapons. Captain, this is incredible. They're not just energy beings. They're consciousness patterns stored in quantum fields. In simple terms, Doctor, think of them like computer programs, but instead of running on silicon chips, they run on the fabric of space itself. When their current body gets damaged, their consciousness just transfers to a new energy matrix. That's why they think they're immortal." Another blast shook the ship. Sarah watched as High Arbiter Zephyx rose higher into space, his form growing larger and brighter. Behind him, at least 20 smaller Etherian figures followed. "Captain," Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka called from the tactical station. "They're surrounding us. If we don't move soon, we'll be trapped." Sarah looked at her options. The Etherians were faster than her ship, and seemed to have unlimited energy. Running wasn't really possible, and conventional weapons wouldn't work against beings made of pure energy. "Dr. Webb, what about those quantum interference patterns you mentioned? The ones that make humans unpredictable? What about them? Can we use them as weapons?" Dr. Webb paused in his scanning and turned to look at Sarah. "You mean weaponize human consciousness?" "Captain, that's actually not completely insane. Our quantum computers do generate similar interference patterns. If we could amplify them, do it. Vasquez, help him with whatever he needs." As the science and engineering teams worked frantically, Sarah had to focus on keeping her ship in one piece. The Etherians were playing with them, she realized. They could have destroyed the Defiance Edge already if they wanted to. Instead, they were demonstrating their power, trying to force the humans to surrender. "Incoming transmission from the planet," Lieutenant Hayes announced. "Put it through." High Arbiter Zephix's face filled the main screen. Behind him, Sarah could see the human colonists still kneeling on the ground. But now she noticed something else. Some of the humans looked afraid, not worshipful. The spell the Etherians had cast over them was starting to break. "You see now, Captain Chen, why resistance is futile," Zephix said. "We have barely used a fraction of our power, yet your primitive vessel is already damaged. Surrender now and we will be merciful." "Define merciful," Sarah replied. "Your crew will be allowed to live as servants. You will help us expand our divine influence to other human worlds. In time, your species will thank us for lifting them from the chaos of self-determination." Sarah felt sick. These beings weren't just conquerors. They were parasites that fed on the freedom of other species. "And if we refuse?" Zephix's expression darkened. "Then you will watch your people suffer." The transmission switched to show the colonists on the planet's surface. Sarah watched in horror as one of the smaller Etherian figures pointed at a group of humans. A shuttle that had been parked near the mining facility suddenly exploded in a ball of fire. 12 people had been inside. No! Sarah shouted, but the transmission had already ended. Captain, Dr. Webb called urgently. I think I found something. The quantum network that connects all the Etherians has a weakness. When they transfer their consciousness, there's a brief moment where they're vulnerable. If we could time our attack perfectly. What kind of attack? The modifications we made to our quantum computers. They're generating massive interference now. If we focus all that energy into a single beam and hit an Etherian during consciousness transfer, we might be able to sever their connection to the network permanently. Sarah felt a spark of hope. You mean we could actually kill them? Theoretically, yes. But we'd have to force them to transfer first, and the timing would have to be perfect. How do we force a consciousness transfer? Chief Engineer Vasquez looked up from her station. We hurt them. If we can damage their current energy matrix enough, they'll have to jump to a new one to survive. Sarah nodded grimly. What do you need? Time, Dr. Webb said. At least 20 minutes to calibrate the quantum beam properly. Sarah looked at the main screen where the Etherian forces were forming up for what looked like a final attack. Tanaka, can you buy us 20 minutes? Her tactical officer studied the enemy formation. Maybe if we use everything we have. But Captain, our conventional weapons won't do any real damage to them. They don't need to do damage. They just need to be annoying. For the next 20 minutes, the Defiance Edge fought the strangest battle in human history. Sarah ordered her ship to move in completely random patterns, using human intuition instead of computer-calculated courses. The Etherians, used to fighting predictable enemies, kept missing their targets. Lieutenant Commander Tanaka fired every weapon the ship had at the glowing figures. Particle beams, plasma torpedoes, even old-fashioned kinetic rounds. None of the weapons hurt the Etherians, but they seemed to irritate them. The energy beings began moving more aggressively, making mistakes in their attacks. It's working, Dr. Webb reported. Their formation is breaking down. They're getting frustrated because they can't predict our movements. Sarah watched as one of the smaller Etherians broke formation and charged directly at her ship. That one's angry. Can you target it? Almost ready, Captain. Just a few more minutes. The angry Etherian fired a concentrated energy beam that punched through the ship's shields and armor like they weren't there. The blast tore through 3 decks and caused a major explosion in the engine room. Direct hit on the engine section, Vasquez reported. We're losing power. Sarah felt the ship shudder and slow down. Emergency lights flickered on as main power failed. How long until we're dead in space? Maybe 10 minutes on emergency power. Dr. Webb. 5 more minutes, Captain. That's all I need. You've got it. Tanaka, concentrate all fire on that angry one. Make it mad enough to do something stupid. The tactical officer followed orders, hitting the charging Etherian with everything the ship had left. The energy being's form flickered and wavered under the assault. It wasn't taking real damage, but Sarah could see it was getting more and more enraged. Finally, the Etherian did exactly what Sarah was hoping for. It gathered all its energy into a single massive attack designed to vaporize the human ship completely. The concentration of power caused its form to become unstable. Now, Dr. Webb shouted. It's transferring to a more stable matrix. Fire the Godbreaker, Sarah ordered. A beam of pure quantum interference shot out from the Defiance Edge. It looked like nothing more than a slight distortion in space. But when it hit the transferring Etherian, the effect was dramatic. The energy being's form exploded in a shower of light that quickly faded to nothing. Where there had been a godlike creature moments before, now there was only empty space. For several seconds, nobody moved. The other Etherians hung motionless in space, staring at the spot where their companion had been.
Is it? Sarah began.
Dead, Dr. Webb confirmed, staring at his instruments in amazement. Completely dead. The consciousness pattern was destroyed during transfer. There's nothing left. High Arbiter Zephix's roar of rage could be heard even through the vacuum of space. His form blazed brighter than a star as he realized what had happened. You killed Arbitrator Nexon. His voice boomed through the ship's communication system. Mortals cannot kill the divine. It is impossible. Sarah opened a channel to respond. Apparently it's not impossible. It's just difficult. This changes nothing. You destroyed one of us through trickery and luck. We are still gods. No, Sarah said quietly, you're not. Gods don't die, remember? You're just advanced aliens who figured out how to cheat death. But every cheat has a counter-cheat. She could see the other Etherians drawing back from Zephix, doubt creeping into their glowing forms. For the first time in thousands of years, they had seen one of their own truly die. "Dr. Webb," Sarah said, turning off the communication channel. "How many more shots do we have?" "With the damage to our power systems? Maybe 2 if we're lucky. Then we'd better make them count." But before Sarah could plan her next move, something unexpected happened. The communications board lit up with incoming signals from all across the star system. "Captain," Lieutenant Hayes said with wonder in his voice, "we're receiving transmissions from multiple ships. They're asking if it's true that we killed an Etherian." Sarah blinked in surprise. "What ships? Our scanners didn't detect any other vessels." "They were hiding, Captain. Behind asteroids and gas clouds running silent. There are dozens of them." On the main screen, ships began appearing as they dropped their stealth systems. Sarah saw vessels from at least 6 different alien species, all of them looking old and battle-worn. One of the ships, a sleek vessel with strange curved lines, hailed the Defiance Edge. The face that appeared on screen was humanoid, but with blue skin and large, dark eyes. "Human ship, this is Captain Veltar of the resistance vessel Freedom's Dawn. Did you really kill an Etherian?" Sarah looked at the alien captain with new understanding. "You're rebels. You've been fighting them." "For 300 years, Veltar confirmed. "Always losing, always running because they could not be killed." "But if what we saw is true..." "It's true," Sarah said firmly. "They can die. They're not gods." Across the communication channel, Sarah heard what sounded like cheering from dozens of different alien voices. These beings had been hiding and fighting a hopeless war for centuries, and now, for the first time, they had hope. "Captain Chen," Veltar continued, "we have information about Etherian weaknesses, ship positions, and resistance cells across the galaxy. If you're willing to work with us..." Sarah looked at her damaged ship, her tired crew, and the glowing figures of the Etherians still floating in space nearby. 24 hours ago, she had been on a simple rescue mission. Now she was apparently leading a galactic rebellion. "Dr. Webb," she said, "how fast can you teach other species to build Godbreaker weapons?" Her science officer grinned. "With their help? Much faster than I thought possible." Sarah opened a general communication channel to all the rebel ships. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth battlecruiser Defiance Edge. As of today, the age of false gods is over. Who's ready to help us prove it?" The response was immediate and overwhelming. Ships from across the system began moving toward the Defiance Edge, ready to join the fight for freedom. High Arbiter Zephix watched this gathering with growing alarm. For 10,000 years, the Etherian collective had ruled through fear and the illusion of divine power. Now, in the space of a few hours, that illusion was crumbling. He sent out a signal to all Etherian forces across the galaxy. The message was simple. The humans have found a way to kill us. Destroy them at all costs. But it was too late. The word was already spreading faster than the Etherians could move. On 1,000 worlds, enslaved species were looking up at the sky and asking the same question. If the gods can die, what else have they lied about? The revolution had begun. The battle began at dawn on New Terra. High Arbiter Zephix had called for reinforcements during the night, and now 30 Etherian figures blazed in the space around the planet like angry stars. They had come to destroy the humans who dared to kill their kind. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance Edge, surrounded by damage and emergency lighting. Her ship had taken a beating, but it was still fighting. More importantly, she was no longer alone. 43 rebel ships from 6 different species had joined her overnight. They formed a rough circle around the damaged human battlecruiser, their weapons ready. Most of the ships were old and scarred from years of hiding and running, but their crews had something the Etherians didn't understand: hope. "Dr. Webb, status report on the Godbreaker weapons," Sarah said. Her science officer looked tired but excited. "We've successfully installed the quantum interference systems on 12 of the Allied ships. The other captains are quick learners, especially Captain Veltar's people." Sarah nodded. The blue-skinned alien had proven to be an excellent ally. His species, the Calorians, had been fighting the Etherians longer than anyone else. They understood the enemy's tactics better than most. "Captain Chen," came Veltar's voice over the communication system, "my scouts report Etherian reinforcements arriving in the outer system. At least 50 more ships." Sarah felt her heart sink. 50 Etherians plus the 30 already here meant they were outnumbered almost 2-1. How long until they arrive? 6 hours, maybe less. Then we end this now before they can surround us completely. Sarah opened a channel to all the rebel ships. All vessels, this is Chen. We have one chance to prove that these false gods can be beaten. If we wait for their reinforcements, we're all dead. Are you with me? The response came from dozens of different voices in dozens of different languages. But the meaning was clear. They were ready to fight. High Arbiter Zephix had positioned himself and his forces in a defensive formation above New Terra. He was no fool. The death of Arbitrator Nexon had shaken him more than he wanted to admit. The humans had somehow found a way to disrupt the consciousness transfer process, making true death possible. But Zephix had been alive for 8,000 years. He had conquered hundreds of worlds and destroyed countless fleets. A few primitive rebels with one lucky weapon would not defeat the divine might of the Etherian collective. All arbitrators, prepare for final assault, he broadcast to his forces. Destroy the human ship first, then eliminate the others. Show no mercy to those who would challenge the gods. The Etherian formation began to move, their energy forms blazing brighter as they prepared to attack. But something was wrong. The rebel ships weren't running or trying to defend themselves. Instead, they were moving in strange patterns, almost like they were dancing. What are they doing? Arbitrator Thyman asked. Zephix studied the enemy formation with growing unease. The ships were moving in completely random directions, with no apparent strategy or coordination. It made no sense. It doesn't matter, he said finally. Randomness cannot defeat divine power. Attack! The first wave of energy beams shot down from the Etherian forces, but most of them missed their targets completely. The rebel ships were moving so unpredictably that even the Etherians' advanced targeting systems couldn't lock onto them. This is impossible, Arbitrator Thyman muttered. Our prediction algorithms should be able to track any ship movement. Dr. Webb smiled as he watched the battle unfold from the Defiant's edge. That's the beauty of chaos, Captain. The Etherians have spent thousands of years fighting logical, predictable enemies. They've never faced anything like human intuition. Sarah had spent the night teaching the rebel captains the most important lesson in human warfare. Sometimes the best strategy is to have no strategy at all. She had shown them how to make decisions based on gut feelings instead of computer calculations. All ships, begin Phase 2, Sarah announced. The rebel fleet suddenly stopped their random movements and converged on a single point in the Etherian formation. It looked like a suicide charge, but Sarah had something else in mind. As the ships closed in, Dr. Webb activated the Godbreaker weapons on all 12 equipped vessels. Beams of quantum interference shot out in all directions, creating a web of disruptive energy around the Etherians. What is this? Zephix demanded as his form began to flicker. The quantum interference was making it harder for him to maintain his energy matrix. It's called a net, Sarah replied over the communication channel. And you're caught in it. The Etherians tried to scatter, but the rebel ships had surrounded them completely. Every time one of the energy beings tried to escape, they ran into another interference beam. Their forms began to destabilize as the quantum fields that held them together were disrupted. All ships, focus fire on the big one, Sarah ordered, pointing to High Arbiter Zephix. 12 quantum interference beams converged on the Etherian leader. His massive form writhed and twisted as the beams tore at his consciousness pattern. For the first time in 8,000 years, Zephix felt something he had almost forgotten. Pain. But he was not just any Etherian. He was High Arbiter, the oldest and most powerful of his kind. With a roar that shook space itself, he began to fight back. Energy poured out of Zephix like water from a broken dam. 3 rebel ships were caught in the blast and vaporized instantly. The quantum interference net began to fail as the Etherian leader drew on power reserves that most of his kind didn't even know existed. He's too strong, Captain Veltar reported, his voice strained. The net is breaking. Sarah watched as Zephix's form stabilized and began to grow larger. The other Etherians rallied around their leader, adding their power to his. The tide of battle was turning against the rebels. Dr. Webb, can we boost the Godbreaker's power? Not without overloading our quantum computers. If they explode, they'll take half the ship with them. Sarah looked at her crew. They had come so far, but it wasn't enough. Zephix was simply too powerful for their current weapons to handle. Then Chief Engineer Rosa Vasquez spoke up from her station. Captain, what if we don't try to kill him directly? What if we trap him instead? Explain. The Etherians exist in multiple dimensions, right? That's how they transfer consciousness. But what if we could cut off his access to those other dimensions? Trap him in normal space where he'd be vulnerable? Dr. Webb's eyes lit up. A dimensional anchor. Rosa, that's brilliant. If we could modify the ship's engines to create a localized space-time distortion, how long would it take? Sarah asked. 20 minutes, maybe less. Sarah looked at the battle raging around them. The rebel fleet was taking heavy casualties and more Etherians were arriving every minute. You've got 10 minutes. That's all we can afford. The next 10 minutes were the longest of Sarah's life. She watched as brave alien crews sacrificed themselves to keep the Etherians busy. Captain Veltar's ship took a direct hit while protecting a damaged vessel. The Calorian captain's last transmission was simple. For freedom. Finally, Dr. Webb announced that the modifications were complete. Captain, we're ready. But there's a problem. To generate a dimensional anchor strong enough to trap Zephyx, we'll have to get very close to him, within a few hundred meters. Sarah understood immediately. At that range, the Etherian leader could destroy her ship with a single thought. How long do we need to maintain the anchor? 30 seconds for the field to stabilize. Then the other ships can target him with the Godbreakers. Do it. The Defiant's edge broke formation and accelerated directly toward High Arbiter Zephyx. The massive energy being saw them coming and gathered power for an attack that would vaporize the human ship completely. But Sarah had one more trick up her sleeve. All power to forward shields. Emergency acceleration! The ship shot forward like a bullet, moving faster than Zephyx had expected. His energy blast missed by mere meters, and suddenly the human battlecruiser was right on top of him. Activate dimensional anchor, Sarah shouted. Space around Zephyx suddenly twisted and folded in on itself. The Etherian leader found himself cut off from the higher dimensions that gave him his power. For the first time in 8,000 years, he was truly vulnerable. Impossible! He screamed. I am eternal. I am divine. You're confused, Sarah replied calmly. You're mortal. You just forgot how to die. The remaining Godbreaker-equipped ships closed in from all sides. 12 beams of quantum interference focused on the trapped Etherian leader. His form began to break apart as the beams tore through his consciousness pattern. But Zephyx was not finished. Even trapped and dying, he had enough power left for one final attack. Energy gathered around him as he prepared to take the human ship down with him. Captain, Dr. Webb warned, he's overloading his matrix. When it goes, the explosion will destroy everything within 1,000 kilometers. Sarah looked at her crew one last time. They had given everything to get this far. All hands, this is the captain. It's been an honor serving with you. But before Zephyx could complete his final attack, something unexpected happened. The other Etherians, seeing their leader trapped and dying, began to panic. Some tried to flee, others tried to help, but their movements became erratic and desperate. Captain Tavara of the Zephyrian resistance ship Knight's Edge saw the opportunity. Her vessel was one of the few that still had functional weapons. She fired everything she had at the panicking Etherians, disrupting their formation just enough to break their concentration. The distraction lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough. The quantum interference beams finally overwhelmed Zephyx's defenses. The Etherian leader's form exploded in a burst of light that could be seen from orbit. When the light faded, High Arbiter Zephyx was gone, not transferred, not hiding in another dimension, but truly and completely dead. The remaining Etherians stared at the empty space where their leader had been. For a moment, nobody moved. Then, one by one, they began to flee. Without Zephyx to lead them, they were just scared beings who had suddenly discovered their own mortality. Let them go, Sarah ordered as some of the rebel ships prepared to pursue. They'll spread the word faster than we ever could. She opened a communication channel to the planet below. The human colonists were still there, but they were no longer kneeling. James Morrison's face appeared on screen, and this time his eyes were clear. Captain Chen, he said, his voice shaking with emotion. We're free. After 3 years of slavery, we're finally free. Sarah smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. That's what humans do, Mr. Morrison. We free each other. Dr. Webb approached her with a data pad full of readings. Captain, the destruction of Zephyx sent a shockwave through the Etherian dimensional network. I'm detecting disruptions across multiple star systems. Their entire command structure is collapsing. Good, Sarah said. But this is just the beginning. There are thousands of Etherians out there, and millions of enslaved beings. We have a lot of work ahead of us. Captain Tavara's face appeared on the communication screen. The Zephyrian woman's reptilian features were marked with what Sarah recognized as a smile. Captain Chen, the resistance fleets across the galaxy are reporting the same thing. Etherian forces are retreating everywhere. Word of Zephix's death is spreading faster than light. Sarah nodded. Then we better move fast. They'll try to regroup once the shock wears off.
How many ships can we gather?
Every free vessel in the galaxy if your plan works. The Resistance has been waiting 300 years for this moment. Sarah looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, countless beings were looking up at the sky and daring to hope for the first time in generations. The false gods were running scared, and the universe was about to learn what freedom really meant. Dr. Webb, how fast can we build more Godbreaker weapons? With the data we've gathered from these battles and help from all the Resistance tech teams, we could have 100 ships equipped within a month. Make it 2 weeks, Sarah said. We're going to finish what we started here. The age of the Etherian collective is over. As the Defiance Edge limped toward the Allied fleet for repairs, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt since this all began. Confidence. They had proven that the false gods could die. Now they just had to kill the rest of them. The news of High Arbiter Zephix's death traveled across the galaxy faster than anyone thought possible. Within days, every inhabited world had heard the impossible story. The Etherian gods could be killed, and a human ship had proven it. Captain Sarah, Chen stood in the command center that had been hastily built on New Terra. What had started as a simple mining colony was now the unofficial headquarters of the largest rebellion in galactic history. Ships arrived every hour, bringing refugees, volunteers, and most importantly, information about Etherian weaknesses. Captain, Dr. Marcus Webb called from his research station. You need to see this. We're receiving reports from across the galaxy. The Etherian collective is fracturing. Sarah walked over to Webb's station where dozens of star charts showed the locations of reported Etherian activity. What she saw surprised her. Instead of the organized formations they had expected, the Etherians seemed to be scattered and confused. What's happening to them? She asked. Near as I can tell, they're having a civil war, Webb replied. Some want to retreat to their home dimensions and hide. Others want to strike back at us with everything they have. And a few are actually questioning whether their whole god complex was justified in the first place. A new voice joined the conversation. That would be the younger Etherians. Sarah turned to see Veltar approaching. The blue-skinned Calorian captain had become her closest ally since the battle at New Terra. His ship had been badly damaged, but he refused to leave while there was still fighting to be done. Younger? Sarah asked. The Etherian collective has been around for 10,000 years, Veltar explained. But not all of them are that old. Some were created or recruited more recently. They remember what it was like to be mortal, and Zephix's death reminded them that mortality isn't something you can simply choose to abandon. Dr. Webb nodded enthusiastically. That explains the energy readings we've been getting. The dimensional network that connects all Etherians is becoming unstable. Every time one of them dies permanently, it sends shockwaves through the entire system. Sarah looked at the star charts again. How many have we killed since the battle here? 47 confirmed kills, Veltar said grimly. Resistance cells across the galaxy have been using the Godbreaker technology you shared. But the cost has been high. We've lost over 200 ships. Sarah felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders. Every day, brave beings from dozens of species were dying in battles against the Etherians. They were winning, but the price was enormous. Captain Chen, a new voice called. Sarah turned to see Commander Elena Rodriguez, one of the few other humans in the Resistance. She had arrived 3 days ago with a small Earth fleet that had been sent to find Sarah's missing ship. What is it, Commander? We just received a priority transmission from Earth. The Etherian collective has sent a formal declaration of war against humanity. They're calling us a cosmic plague that must be eliminated. Sarah wasn't surprised. The Etherians had ruled through fear and the belief in their own superiority for millennia. Humanity had shattered both of those foundations. Of course they wanted revenge. How much time do we have before they reach Earth? Sarah asked. According to our intelligence, they're gathering a massive fleet in the Andorian system. At least 300 Etherians and their remaining servant species. They'll reach Earth in 2 weeks. Sarah stared at the star charts, thinking rapidly. Earth had decent defenses, but nothing that could stop 300 godlike beings. The planet would be destroyed unless the Resistance could stop them first. Veltar, how many ships do we have that are equipped with Godbreaker weapons? 87 operational vessels, the Calorian replied immediately. But Captain, even with our new weapons, we can't fight 300 Etherians in open battle. The numbers just don't work, Sarah nodded. Then we don't fight them in open battle. We make them come to us on our terms. She turned to address the entire command center. I need all department heads here now. We're going to plan the largest ambush in galactic history. Over the next few hours, representatives from a dozen different species gathered in the command center. There were Calorians like Veltar, the reptilian Zephyrians, the insectoid hive mind collective, and even a few of the energy beings called the Ethereals who had broken away from Etherian control. Here's the situation, Sarah began, projecting a holographic star map for everyone to see. The Etherians are massing for an attack on Earth. We can't stop them with conventional tactics, so we're going to use something they won't expect, their own arrogance against them. She highlighted a star system between the Andorian gathering point and Earth. The Kepler 442 system. It has an unstable star that produces massive electromagnetic storms, perfect for hiding a fleet. Commander Tavara of the Zephyrians studied the map. You want to hide our entire fleet in a star storm? That's incredibly dangerous. Less dangerous than fighting 300 Etherians in open space, Sarah replied. But there's more to the plan than just hiding. Dr. Webb, explain what you've discovered about the Etherian network. Webb stood up and activated another holographic display. The dimensional network that connects all Etherians is like a giant spider web. Each individual Etherian is a point on the web, connected to all the others. When we kill one, it sends vibrations through the entire network. So? Asked Captain Rixtal of the Hive Mind Collective, his multiple voices speaking in unison. So, Webb continued, if we could kill enough of them at exactly the same time, we might be able to overload the entire network, cause a cascade failure that would disconnect every Etherian from their consciousness backup systems. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. You're talking about killing them all at once, Veltar said slowly, making the entire collective mortal again. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. But it has to be coordinated perfectly. We need to hit at least 100 Etherians within a few seconds of each other. If we're too slow, they'll adapt and reinforce the network. Commander Rodriguez shook her head. Sarah, that's assuming we can even get close enough to 100 Etherians without being detected. That's where their arrogance comes in, Sarah said with a grim smile. They think they're gods. Gods don't run from mortals, and they don't expect mortals to be clever enough to set traps. They'll come charging through that system expecting an easy victory. The planning session continued through the night. Every detail had to be perfect. Ships would be positioned throughout the Kepler 442 system, hidden by the electromagnetic storms. When the Etherian fleet arrived, they would find what appeared to be a small, poorly organized resistance force. The Etherians would attack, confident in their superiority. And that's when the real fleet would reveal itself. There's one more thing, Sarah said as the meeting was ending. This plan requires someone to coordinate the timing from close range. Someone has to get right into the middle of the Etherian fleet to make sure all our ships fire at exactly the right moment. Everyone knew what she was really saying. It was a suicide mission. Whoever coordinated the attack would be destroyed along with the enemy fleet. I'll do it, Sarah said simply. The Defiance Edge has the most advanced communication systems. And my crew knows the Godbreaker technology better than anyone. Captain, Veltar protested. There has to be another way. There isn't, Sarah replied firmly. And even if there was, this is my responsibility. I started this war when I refused to kneel to false gods. I'm going to finish it. The resistance fleet gathered in the Kepler 442 system over the next week. Ships arrived from across the galaxy, carrying beings who had lived their entire lives under Etherian rule. For many of them, this was the first time they had ever fought back against their oppressors. Dr. Webb worked around the clock to install Godbreaker weapons on as many ships as possible. The technology had improved dramatically since the first battle at New Terra. The new weapons were more powerful and more reliable. How many ships do we have total? Sarah asked as she reviewed the final preparations. 237, Commander Rodriguez reported. Not all of them have Godbreaker weapons, but every ship has crews that are ready to fight. Sarah nodded. And our intelligence on the Etherian fleet? They're moving exactly as predicted, Veltar confirmed. 312 Etherians plus about 50 ships from their servant species. They'll reach this system in 18 hours. As the hours passed, Sarah found herself thinking about Earth. She had left her home world as a simple starship captain on a routine patrol. Now she was about to fight a battle that would determine the fate of every free being in the galaxy. Captain, Dr. Webb approached her on the bridge of the Defiance Edge. The weapon modifications are complete. We've installed Godbreaker systems on 143 ships. If we can coordinate the timing perfectly, we will, Sarah said with more confidence than she felt. We have to. The Etherian fleet arrived right on schedule. Sarah watched on her sensors as hundreds of energy signatures appeared at the edge of the system. The false gods were coming, and they were coming fast. All ships, this is Chen, she broadcast on a secured channel. Remember, we need to look weak and disorganized until the last moment. Let them think they're winning right up until we spring the trap. The first phase of the battle went exactly as planned. A small group of resistance ships engaged the Etherian advance guard, fighting bravely but appearing to be overwhelmed. The Etherians pressed forward, confident that they were facing the main resistance force. High Arbitrator Nexus, who had taken command after Zephix's death, led the charge personally. She was older and more cautious than Zephix had been, but she still believed in Etherian superiority. The idea that mortals could threaten the divine order was simply unthinkable. Destroy them all, she commanded her forces. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who defy the gods. The Etherian fleet spread out through the system, hunting down the scattered resistance ships. They were so focused on their prey that they didn't notice the electromagnetic signatures hidden in the star's corona. Almost there, Sarah whispered, watching as more and more Etherians moved into the kill zone. Come on, just a little closer. Finally, when over 200 Etherians were within the trap, Sarah gave the signal. All ships, this is Chen. Execute Operation Godfall. I repeat, execute Godfall. Suddenly, the Kepler 442 system erupted with light as nearly 250 ships revealed themselves simultaneously. The hidden fleet opened fire with everything they had, Godbreaker beams lancing out in all directions. The Etherians, caught completely off guard, reeled under the sudden assault. Dozens of them died in the first few seconds as the quantum interference beams tore through their consciousness patterns. But Nexus was quick to recover.
It's a trap!
She screamed. All forces converge on the human command ship. Kill the one who leads them. Sarah smiled grimly as she saw the entire Etherian fleet turning toward her ship. Dr. Webb, are we ready for the cascade? Affirmative, Captain. We have 112 confirmed kills. If we can maintain this rate for 30 more seconds, we'll maintain it, Sarah said. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships concentrate fire on the big formations. We need to hit them all at once for this to work. The battle reached its crescendo as 200 resistance ships focused their fire on the remaining Etherians. Sarah watched her tactical display as the kill count climbed. 120, 130, 140. Cascade initiation in 10 seconds, Dr. Webb announced. But the Etherians weren't going down without a fight. Nexus gathered the remaining collective members into a tight formation and began channeling their combined power into a single devastating attack. Captain, Webb warned, if they complete that power buildup, they'll destroy half our fleet. Sarah didn't hesitate. All power to engines. Ramming speed. Sarah, no! Commander Rodriguez's voice came over the communication channel. There has to be another way. There is no other way, Sarah replied calmly. Someone has to stop that power buildup, and we're the only ship close enough. The Defiance Edge accelerated directly toward the Etherian formation, its Godbreaker weapons firing continuously. The quantum interference beams tore through the enemy formation, disrupting their power buildup just enough to prevent the devastating attack. Cascade initiation now, Dr. Webb shouted. 157 Etherians died simultaneously as the resistance fleet concentrated its fire. The dimensional network that had connected the collective for 10,000 years overloaded and collapsed. Across the galaxy, every remaining Etherian felt the network die. Suddenly, they were truly mortal again. Cut off from their consciousness backups, vulnerable for the first time in millennia, High Arbitrator Nexus stared at Sarah's ship in horror and rage. You've destroyed everything. 10,000 years of divine order gone. Good, Sarah replied. It was never supposed to be there in the first place. Nexus gathered the last of her power for one final attack. but she was no longer connected to the vast energy reserves of the collective. She was just one being fighting alone. The quantum interference beam from the Defiance Edge struck her directly. For a moment, her form blazed brighter than the system's star. Then she simply faded away, leaving nothing but empty space. The battle was over. The Etherian Collective, rulers of the galaxy for 10,000 years, had been destroyed. Across hundreds of worlds, enslaved beings looked up at the sky and realized they were free. But the victory had come at a cost. The Defiance Edge was dying, its engines overloaded from the final attack run. Sarah sat in her command chair, watching as her ship broke apart around her. "Captain," Dr. Webb said quietly, "it's been an honor." Sarah smiled, thinking of all the worlds that would wake up free tomorrow. "The honor was mine, Doctor. The honor was mine." The last transmission from the Defiance Edge reached every ship in the Resistance fleet. "This is Captain Sarah Chen. The gods are dead. The galaxy is free. Make it count." 6 months after the Battle of Kepler 442, the galaxy was a very different place. The Etherian Collective was gone, but its destruction had left behind chaos on a scale that no one had anticipated. Commander Elena Rodriguez stood in the rebuilt command center on New Terra, looking at reports that came in from across the galaxy. She had taken command of the resistance forces after Sarah Chen's sacrifice, and the job was more difficult than anyone had imagined. "Commander," called Captain Veltar from his communication station, "we're receiving distress calls from the Vega system. Without Etherian control, the local warlords are fighting each other for territory. Civilian casualties are mounting." Elena sighed. This was the problem they faced everywhere. For 10,000 years, the Etherians had kept order through fear and oppression. Now that they were gone, old conflicts were resurging across the galaxy. "How many ships can we spare for a peacekeeping mission?" she asked. "Maybe 12, replied Captain Devara. "But that leaves us vulnerable if something bigger comes up." Elena was about to respond when Dr. Webb rushed into the command center, his face pale with alarm. "Commander, we have a major problem. I'm detecting massive energy signatures in the void sector." Elena felt her blood turn cold. The void sector was where the Etherians had originally come from, a region of space that existed partially outside normal dimensions. According to captured Etherian data, it had been empty for thousands of years. "What kind of energy signatures?" she asked. "The same type we saw from the Etherians, but much stronger. Commander, I think there are more of them out there. A lot more." Before Elena could respond, every communication system in the command center activated simultaneously. A figure appeared on the screens that made everyone's blood freeze. It looked like an Etherian, but it was different. Older, more powerful, and radiating an aura of absolute malevolence. "Mortal beings," the entity spoke, its voice echoing from dimensions beyond normal space. "I am Supreme Arbiter Omnix, first of the Etherian Ascended. You have destroyed our children, our servants, our carefully ordered galaxy. For this you will pay the ultimate price." Elena forced herself to remain calm, even though every instinct told her to run. The Etherian Collective chose to enslave free beings. We simply gave those beings their freedom back. Omnix's laughter was like the sound of dying stars. "Freedom? You speak of freedom while the galaxy burns in chaos? You have proven that mortals cannot govern themselves. Therefore, we have decided that mortals should not exist at all." The transmission shifted to show images from across the galaxy. Massive structures were rising from the void sector, each one the size of a small moon. They pulsed with dark energy that made the original Etherians look like candles compared to a forest fire. "Behold the void cascade generators," Omnix continued, "weapons capable of unraveling the very fabric of space-time itself. In 72 hours we will activate them. The cascade will spread across the galaxy at faster than light speeds, dissolving every planet, every star, every living being into component atoms." Elena stared at the images in horror. "You're talking about genocide on a galactic scale. Why?" "Because," Omnix replied simply, "if we cannot rule, then no one will. The galaxy will be cleansed of the chaos you have brought, and we will begin again with more obedient species." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. "Can they actually do it?" Elena asked Dr. Webb. The scientist was studying his instruments with shaking hands. "Based on these energy readings, yes. The technology is far beyond anything we've seen before. If they activate those generators, every solar system in the galaxy will be destroyed within a matter of days." Captain Veltar slammed his fist on his console. So we stop them. We destroy the generators before they can activate them. With what? Elena demanded. Our entire fleet combined couldn't scratch one of those things. They're protected by energy shields that make our Godbreaker weapons look like toys. Dr. Webb suddenly straightened up, his eyes wide with a new idea. Wait, there might be a way. It's insane, but it might work. I'm listening, Elena said. The void cascade generators work by creating tears in space-time itself. But what if we could turn that power back on them? Use their own weapon to destroy the void sector? Elena frowned. How? We'd need to get someone inside the void sector to reverse the polarity of the cascade generators. Instead of tearing space apart, they'd collapse it. The entire void sector would fold in on itself, taking the ascended Etherians with it. That's suicide, Captain Tavara pointed out. Whoever goes in there won't be coming back. Elena looked around the command center at the faces of beings from dozens of different species. They had all fought together, suffered together, and won their freedom together. Now they were being asked to sacrifice everything to save a galaxy that barely knew they existed. I'll go, Elena said quietly. No, Veltar replied immediately. You're needed here to coordinate the resistance. I'll take a volunteer squad. It has to be humans, Dr. Webb interrupted. The quantum interference that makes human minds unpredictable is the only thing that might get past the ascended Etherians' defenses. They've had thousands of years to prepare for every other species in the galaxy. Elena nodded slowly. Then we need to get to Earth. If we're going to ask humans to die for the galaxy, we need to give them the choice. The journey to Earth took 2 days at maximum speed. When Elena's small fleet arrived, they found the homeworld of humanity mobilizing for war. Earth's leaders had detected the energy signatures from the void sector and were preparing for the worst. Admiral Jackson, the head of Earth's Space Defense Force, met Elena at the orbital station above Earth. He was an older man with gray hair and steady eyes that had seen too much war. Commander Rodriguez, he said, shaking her hand. We've been following your progress since Captain Chen's last transmission. The whole planet knows what she did. Admiral, we need volunteers for a mission that won't have any survivors, Elena said bluntly. The entire galaxy depends on it. Admiral Jackson didn't hesitate. How many ships do you need? Within hours, Elena found herself addressing a room full of Earth's best pilots and engineers. She explained the situation honestly. The mission was suicide. The odds of success were minimal, and the fate of trillions of beings hung in the balance. When she finished speaking, the room was silent for a long moment. Then a young pilot stood up. Ma'am, my name is Lieutenant James Chen. Captain Sarah Chen was my aunt. She taught me that sometimes the most important battles are the ones you know you can't win. I volunteer. One by one, other hands went up around the room. By the end of the briefing, Elena had more volunteers than she could possibly use. The plan they developed over the next day was elegantly simple. A small fleet of human ships would approach the void sector, using the same unpredictable tactics that had worked against the original Etherians. While the ascended beings were focused on these ships, a single modified vessel would slip through their defenses and reach the cascade generators. Dr. Webb had managed to create a device that could reverse the polarity of the generators, but it had to be activated manually from inside the void sector. Whoever did it would be at the center of a collapsing pocket of space-time. There would be no escape. Are you sure about this, Lieutenant Chen? Elena asked as they prepared to depart. James Chen looked out at the stars and smiled. My aunt once said that humanity doesn't kneel to anyone. That includes cosmic entities who think they can wipe out the galaxy because they didn't get their way. The human fleet departed Earth 40 hours before the void cascade was scheduled to activate. 25 ships carrying the best and bravest that humanity had to offer, heading toward what they all knew was certain death. As they approached the void sector, Elena was amazed by what she saw. The space around the generators was filled with ascended Etherians, beings so powerful that they existed partially outside normal reality. Each one was the size of a battleship and radiated energy that could destroy planets. Remember, Elena broadcast to the fleet, our job is to cause chaos and confusion, make them focus on us instead of Lieutenant Chen's ship. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. Human ships darted between godlike beings that could manipulate reality itself, firing weapons that barely scratched their enemies but somehow managed to annoy them. The key was unpredictability. Every time the ascended Etherians thought they had figured out human tactics, the humans did something completely different. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Chen piloted his modified ship through the chaos, using every trick his aunt had taught him about fighting beings who thought they were gods. His vessel was small and fast, designed to slip past enemies rather than fight them. "I'm approaching the first generator," he reported. Beginning polarity reversal sequence. Supreme Arbiter Omnix suddenly realized what was happening. "Stop him!" the entity roared. "The mortal is tampering with the cascade." But it was too late. The ascended Etherians were so focused on the main battle that they had ignored the single small ship. By the time they turned their attention to Chen, he had already reached the heart of the generator complex. "Polarity reversal complete," Chen reported calmly. "Beginning cascade activation." "James, get out of there!" Elena shouted over the communication channel. "Can't do that, ma'am," Chen replied. "Someone needs to make sure this thing stays activated long enough to work. Besides, I always wanted to see what the inside of a collapsing dimension looks like." The void cascade generators began to activate, but instead of tearing space apart, they began to fold it in on itself. The entire void sector started to collapse, creating a gravitational anomaly that pulled everything in the area toward a single point. Supreme Arbiter Omnix tried to escape, but the collapsing spacetime made it impossible to reach the higher dimensions, where the ascended Etherians normally hid. For the first time in their existence, they were trapped in normal space. "This is impossible!" Omnix screamed as his form began to stretch and distort. "We are eternal. We are beyond destruction." Lieutenant Chen's voice came over the communication system one last time. "You know what the difference is between gods and humans? Gods think they're immortal. Humans know they're not, and they fight anyway." The void sector collapsed completely, taking the ascended Etherians and their doomsday weapons with it. The cascade that was meant to destroy the galaxy instead consumed only the beings who had created it. Elena watched from a safe distance as the last traces of the void sector disappeared into a point of light that quickly faded to nothing. 24 human ships had made it out of the battle zone. Lieutenant Chen's ship was not among them. "All ships, this is Rodriguez," Elena broadcast. "The threat is over. The ascended Etherians are gone. James Chen and his crew have saved the galaxy." The celebration that followed lasted for weeks. Across hundreds of worlds, beings that had been preparing for death instead found themselves free to live their lives without fear of cosmic tyrants. A year later, Elena stood in the memorial garden that had been built on New Terra. Thousands of names were carved into the black stone walls, representing all the beings who had died fighting for freedom. At the center of the memorial was a statue of Captain Sarah Chen, with an inscription that read, "She reminded the universe that true immortality comes not from refusing to die, but from choosing what's worth dying for." Next to Sarah's statue was a smaller monument dedicated to Lieutenant James Chen and the crews who had died destroying the void sector. The inscription on this memorial was simpler. They chose. Veltar approached Elena as she stood before the memorials. The Calorian captain had been elected as the first president of the new Galactic Alliance, a democratic government that represented all free species. "The Council has approved the new exploration initiative," he said. "We're sending ships to search for other civilizations that might need our help." Elena nodded. "Good. Sarah always said that freedom isn't something you win once and keep forever. It's something you have to fight for every day. And if we find more cosmic tyrants who think they're gods..." Elena smiled, thinking of the 24 human ships that had returned from the void sector and the thousands more that Earth was building. "Then we'll remind them what humanity is good at. We're very good at teaching false gods how to die." As the two friends walked away from the memorial, neither of them noticed the small inscription at the base of James Chen's monument. It was written in a dozen different languages, but the message was the same in all of them. They claimed to be gods until a human dangerous battlecruiser shattered their immortality. And when new gods arose, humanity shattered them too. For as long as free beings exist in this galaxy, there will always be humans ready to remind tyrants that they are not divine. They are simply mortal beings who forgot how to die, and humans are very good teachers. The galaxy was free and it would stay that way. Humanity would make sure of it.
The enormous ship hung in space, its metallic surface reflecting the distant light of Earth's sun. Admiral Cross stood on the command deck, looking at the blue planet displayed on the main screen. His thin lips curved into what passed for a smile among his kind. "So this is the planet Earth," he said. His voice was flat and cold. "It looks small and weak." The scout officer nodded. "Yes, Admiral. Our reports show the humans are far behind us in technology. They have only just begun space travel beyond their own moon. They still fight among themselves over land and resources." Admiral Cross had conquered 17 planets for the Galactic Empire. Earth would be his 18th. The Empire spread across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy, bringing hundreds of worlds under its control. Some joined willingly, seeing the benefits of imperial rule. Others needed to be shown the error of resisting. "Prepare a small fleet," ordered Cross. "We won't need much to take this world. 5 battle cruisers should be enough." His second-in-command, Officer Trell, looked concerned. "Sir, our standard procedure is to send at least 15 ships for a planet of this size." Cross waved his hand dismissively. "Don't waste resources. These humans have nothing that can challenge even one of our ships. I want this conquest done quickly and cheaply. The Emperor grows tired of long campaigns." "As you command, Admiral," said Trell, bowing slightly before leaving to carry out the orders. Cross continued studying the planet. Intelligence reports showed humans were divided into many nations, with different languages and cultures. They had nuclear weapons but had barely used them. Their space technology was primitive. It would be an easy victory, another jewel for the Empire's crown. On Earth, Dr. Thomas Reed was working late at the Global Space Defense Initiative headquarters. As the head scientist for the secret international agency, he had been tracking unusual signals from the edge of the solar system for weeks. Tonight, those signals had changed. "They're moving," he said, pointing at the monitor. His assistant, Maria, looked over his shoulder. "Moving where?" she asked. "Toward us," Thomas replied. "And fast. Whatever they are, they'll reach Earth orbit in less than 2 days." Maria's face showed worry. "Should we alert the Security Council?" Thomas nodded. "Call Director Wilson immediately. Tell him Code Prometheus is active." Within hours, leaders from every major nation were gathered in an emergency virtual meeting. Though they often disagreed on Earth's problems, the potential threat from space united them in ways nothing else could. "Ladies and gentlemen," began Director Wilson, his face grim on screens around the world, "we have confirmed the presence of 5 large spacecraft approaching Earth. They are not from any Earth nation. We are facing first contact with an alien civilization." The Chinese president spoke first. "Are they hostile?" "We don't know," answered Wilson. "But they haven't responded to any of our attempts at communication, and they're moving fast, in formation. That suggests military." The Russian leader leaned forward. "What defenses do we have against such technology?" Director Wilson looked to Thomas, who cleared his throat before speaking to the world's leadership. "We've been preparing for this possibility," he said. "Project Aurora has developed weapons based on theoretical alien technology. They're untested against actual alien ships, but they're the best we have." "How many of these weapons do we have?" asked the American president. Thomas hesitated. 12 prototypes spread across secure bases worldwide. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. 12 experimental weapons against 5 advanced alien ships. "We need more than weapons," said the Indian Prime Minister. "We need a strategy." 2 days later, the 5 Imperial battle cruisers entered Earth orbit. Each one was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons that could reduce continents to ash. "Scan complete, Admiral," reported an officer. "The humans have detected us. They are moving military assets, but nothing that poses a threat." Admiral Cross nodded. "Send the standard Imperial greeting. Offer them the chance to surrender and join the Empire peacefully." The message was broadcast in all Earth languages. Submit to Imperial rule or face destruction. On Earth, the response was immediate. Rather than panic or surrender, humanity prepared to fight. In a historic moment, the United Nations unanimously voted to present a united front. "We will not surrender our world," was the simple reply sent back to the alien fleet. Admiral Cross was surprised but not concerned. They choose the hard way. Begin the first phase of conquest. Target their largest military installations as a demonstration. The Imperial ships positioned themselves over key points around the globe. Their weapons systems powered up, ready to rain destruction on the humans below. But Earth was not as helpless as it appeared. As the Imperial ships prepared to fire, 12 hidden bases around the world activated Project Aurora. Strange energy beams shot upward from Earth's surface, connecting with the alien ships in blinding flashes of light. On the command deck of his flagship, Admiral Cross was thrown to the floor as the ship shuddered violently. "What is happening?" he demanded, pulling himself up. Officer Trell looked stunned. "Sir, they've somehow disrupted our shield systems. 2 of our ships report critical damage to their weapon arrays." "Impossible," Cross shouted. "Their technology is primitive." Another officer called out, "Sir, we're detecting hundreds of small craft launching from the planet's surface." Earth's combined air forces were rising to meet the invaders. Fighter jets that should have been useless against Imperial technology were somehow penetrating the damaged shields, launching missiles that actually caused damage. Admiral Cross watched in disbelief as one of his battle cruisers listed to the side, smoke pouring from multiple hull breaches. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. The science officer looked up from his station. "Sir, they appear to have developed technology specifically designed to counter our systems. The energy signature is unlike anything we've encountered, but it's effectively neutralizing our advantages." Thomas Reed watched from his command center as the human counterattack progressed. Project Aurora had worked better than they had dared hope. For decades, scientists had been studying crashed alien scout ships, kept secret from the public, to develop defenses against exactly this kind of attack. "They didn't expect us to be ready," Thomas said to Maria. "That's our one advantage." Around the world, humanity fought with everything it had. The battle was far from won, but the invaders were facing something they had never expected. A primitive species that somehow wasn't primitive when it came to defense. Admiral Cross, facing the first serious challenge of his career, made a decision. "Regroup the fleet at safe distance," he ordered. "We need to reassess our approach." As the damaged Imperial ships withdrew to a higher orbit, humans celebrated their first small victory. But Thomas Reed and the world's leaders knew the truth. This was just the beginning. The aliens would be back, and next time they wouldn't underestimate Earth. "We've surprised them," Thomas told the Emergency Council. "But now we need to prepare for their real attack." For the first time in history, all of humanity stood united against a common threat. The Galactic Empire had made a serious mistake in targeting Earth, and they were about to learn just how resourceful humans could be. Admiral Cross paced the command deck of his flagship, rage evident in every step. The ship still showed battle damage from their first encounter with the humans. Repair drones worked frantically outside the hull, their lights visible through the viewports. "How?" he demanded, stopping in front of his science officer. "How did a primitive planet know how to counter our shield technology?" The science officer, Mira, looked nervous. "Sir, we believe they may have captured and studied one of our scout ships. Records show we lost contact with Scout Unit 17 in this system about 50 Earth years ago." Cross slammed his fist on a nearby console. "And this information wasn't in the briefing. Someone will pay for this failure." Officer Trell approached cautiously. "Admiral, the Emperor has sent a message. He demands to know why a simple conquest has turned into a humiliation." Cross's face darkened. "Tell him we underestimated the humans, but we will not make that mistake again. Request reinforcements. 20 battleships at minimum." 20 ships? Trell looked shocked. "For one primitive world. These humans," Cross said through gritted teeth, "are not as primitive as we thought." On Earth, Major Robert Hayes watched the alien ships through high-powered binoculars. They had retreated to a higher orbit, but remained visible as moving stars against the night sky. As the military commander of the Global Defense Forces North American Division, he had the best view from his mountain outpost in Colorado. "They'll be back," he said to no one in particular, and with friends. His second-in-command, Captain Lisa Chen, nodded beside him. "The question is, how long do we have to prepare?" Robert lowered his binoculars. "Dr. Reed estimates 2 weeks for them to bring reinforcements. We need to be ready." The past 3 days had been a whirlwind of activity across the planet. Ancient enemies now work together, sharing military resources and technology. Scientists from rival nations collaborated openly, studying the damaged alien ship that had crashed in the South Pacific. In his underground laboratory, Thomas Reed hadn't slept in days. The crashed Imperial ship was a goldmine of information. Teams of engineers were already reverse engineering the alien technology, finding ways to adapt it to Earth weapons. Their power systems are based on principles we've theorized but never mastered, Thomas explained to a group of international scientists. But we can modify our existing systems to mimic their approach. Maria handed him a tablet showing the latest test results. The prototype shields are holding up to our strongest weapons, if we can mass-produce these in time. Thomas nodded. That's the challenge. We need to arm every major city and military base within 2 weeks. Across the globe, factories were converted to produce the new defense systems. Soldiers trained with newly designed weapons. Civilians built shelters and stockpiled supplies. Humanity was preparing for the biggest fight in its history. In orbit around Mars, hidden from Earth's detection systems, Admiral Cross met with the captains of 25 Imperial battleships. The Emperor had sent more than he requested, a sign of how seriously the Empire now took the Earth threat. "The humans surprised us once," Cross told the assembled officers. "They will not do so again. Our new strategy will hit them from multiple angles simultaneously, overwhelming their defenses." The holographic display showed Earth rotating slowly, with red markers indicating targets. "First wave will target their power infrastructure," Cross explained. "Second wave hits their command centers. Third wave targets their weapon emplacements. By the time the fourth wave lands ground troops, they should be in chaos." Captain Dren, a veteran of many conquests, raised a concern. "Admiral, if they have shield technology, our standard bombardment may not be effective." Cross smiled coldly. "We've analyzed their shields from our first encounter. They're using an adapted version of our older shield systems. Our current weapons are designed to penetrate those." The assembled officers nodded in approval. The Empire's technological advantage would be restored. Robert Hayes stood in the underground war room beneath the Rocky Mountains. Representatives from every major military force on Earth were present, either physically or via secure video link. "Our satellite network has detected Imperial reinforcements gathering near Mars," he announced. "We estimate they have at least 25 capital ships, each more powerful than the ones we faced before." The Russian general frowned. "Our new shields are not yet deployed worldwide. We need more time." "Time is something we don't have," Robert replied. "Dr. Reed, what's our status on the new weapons?" Thomas stepped forward. "We've managed to adapt their propulsion technology to our missiles. The yield is 5 times greater than our previous best. Production is at maximum capacity, but we'll only have enough to arm about 60% of our forces by the time they attack." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Even with their new technology, they were outgunned and outnumbered. "Then we need something they won't expect," Robert said finally. "Something that isn't about technology. Something human." The Chinese general leaned forward. "What do you propose?" "Deception," Robert said simply. "The oldest trick in warfare. We make them think we're stronger in some places and weaker in others. We set traps. We use the planet itself against them." The Indian admiral nodded slowly. "Earth's oceans cover most of the surface. The aliens may not understand how we can use them." "Exactly," Robert agreed. "And our atmosphere, our gravity, our knowledge of the terrain. These are all advantages they can't take from us." Over the next hour, A plan took shape. It wasn't perfect, and it would cost lives, but it gave humanity a fighting chance. 2 weeks later, the Imperial fleet moved into attack position. Admiral Cross watched with satisfaction as his ships formed a perfect attack formation above Earth. "Begin the attack sequence," he ordered. No mercy this time. The first wave of ships descended, weapons charged to target Earth's power plants and energy grids. But as they entered the atmosphere, something unexpected happened. Massive storm systems, far larger than natural weather patterns, engulfed the ships. Lightning strikes, impossibly powerful and precise, hammered their hulls. "What is this?" Cross demanded. "Weather control. That's impossible with their technology." Officer Trell checked his instruments. "Sir, they've seeded the clouds with some kind of conductive particles. They're using Earth's natural electrical potential, amplified somehow." Before Cross could respond, reports flooded in from the second wave. As they approached their targets, hidden weapons emerged from oceans, mountains, and forests, places the Imperial scans had shown as empty. On the surface, Robert Hayes gave orders from a mobile command center disguised as a farming vehicle. "They expected us to protect our cities," he told his officers, "so we made them believe that's where our defenses are concentrated. Meanwhile, our real strength is scattered and hidden." The battle raged across the planet. Imperial ships found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, using the planet itself as both shield and weapon. Humanity was not winning. Not yet. But they were surviving, adapting, and learning with each engagement. And for the Galactic Empire, what should have been a simple conquest was becoming a costly, frustrating war of attrition. Admiral Cross, watching another of his ships retreat with heavy damage, began to wonder if Earth was worth the price the Empire was paying. The Imperial flagship trembled as another blast rocked its hull. Admiral Cross steadied himself against his command console, his face twisted with rage. What should have been a quick conquest had turned into a 3-week battle with no end in sight. "Status report," he barked. Officer Trell's voice was tight with strain. "Sir, we've lost 4 more ships. The humans have deployed some kind of energy weapon that targets our engines specifically." "Impossible," Cross muttered, but he knew it was true. Somehow, these primitives were adapting their technology at an alarming rate. "What about our ground forces?" "Mixed results, Admiral," reported the ground commander. "We've established control in some regions, but resistance is fierce everywhere. The humans fight house to house, street to street, and they keep changing tactics. As soon as we adapt to one approach, they switch to another." Cross pounded his fist on the console. "The Emperor demands results. Find their command centers and destroy them. Cut off the head, and the body will die." Deep beneath the ruins of what had once been London, Dr. Thomas Reed worked frantically. The underground bunker shook as Imperial bombs fell on the city above, but the reinforced structure held firm. "We've almost got it," he told Maria, who was connecting delicate wiring inside a strange device. "If this works, we can disrupt their neural communications." The device was a hybrid of human and alien technology. Through captured Imperial soldiers, they had discovered that the Empire used a form of direct neural link for battlefield communications, a system far more efficient than radio or digital signals. "Are you sure this won't kill them?" Maria asked, making a final adjustment. Thomas shook his head. "It shouldn't. Based on our tests, it will create a kind of neural static, painful and disorienting, but not lethal. It should give our forces the advantage they need." A soldier rushed into the lab. "Dr. Reed, Imperial forces have broken through the outer defenses. We need to evacuate now." Thomas looked at the device. "We need 10 more minutes to finish the calibration." "We may not have 10 minutes, sir," the soldier replied, the sound of explosions growing louder. Thomas made a quick decision. "Maria, finish the calibration. I'll upload the schematics to the global network. If we don't make it, others can build it." As Thomas worked at his computer, Maria completed the delicate adjustments. The device hummed to life, its core glowing with an eerie blue light. "It's working," she exclaimed. Thomas finished the upload just as another explosion rocked the bunker, closer this time. "Let's test it now. If it works, we can." The ceiling partially collapsed as an Imperial breaching pod smashed through the reinforced concrete. Armored soldiers poured into the lab, weapons raised. "Don't move, humans," the lead soldier commanded. Thomas and Maria raised their hands slowly, but Thomas managed to press the activation button with his elbow as he did so. The effect was immediate. The Imperial soldiers screamed, clutching their helmets. Some fell to their knees, while others fired their weapons wildly, hitting nothing. "It works," Maria shouted over the chaos. "Run." They grabbed the device and fled through an emergency exit, leaving the disoriented Imperial soldiers behind. In North America, Major Robert Hayes led a guerrilla campaign against the Imperial occupation forces. The aliens controlled the major cities, but the vast wilderness belonged to the human resistance. "Their supply lines are stretched thin," Robert told his officers in their mountain hideout. "They can't maintain this level of occupation forever." Captain Lisa Chen pointed to a holographic map showing Imperial positions. "They're bringing in more troops every day. And they've started using civilian hostages to prevent attacks." Robert's face hardened. "Then we need to hit them where they don't expect it, in orbit. Dr. Reed's new device is being replicated worldwide. If we can get it into space." "How?" asked one of the officers. "We can't launch rockets without them being shot down immediately." "Not rockets," Robert said with a grim smile. "Submarines." The plan was audacious. Modified nuclear submarines would carry special missiles designed to reach orbit from underwater launch positions. The missiles would deploy thousands of tiny drones, each carrying a miniature version of Thomas's neural disruptor. "We'll need a distraction," Lisa pointed out. "Something big enough to draw their attention away from the oceans." Robert nodded. "That's why every resistance group around the world will launch a coordinated attack at exactly the same time. It won't be enough to win, but it will keep their eyes off the water." Admiral Cross stood before the holographic image of the Emperor, trying to hide his nervousness. "The conquest progresses, Your Eminence," he reported. "We control 60% of their population centers." The Emperor's expression was cold. "Yet after a month, you still face resistance. This small planet has cost us 9 battleships and thousands of troops. The Council questions the value of this conquest." Admiral Cross swallowed hard. "Earth has unexpected resources, Your Eminence. Their adaptability is remarkable, but we are wearing them down." "See that you do, Admiral," the Emperor replied. "The Empire does not tolerate failure." The hologram disappeared, leaving Cross alone with his thoughts. The truth was worse than he had admitted. The humans were not being worn down. If anything, their resistance was growing stronger and more coordinated each day. His thoughts were interrupted by alarms blaring across the ship. "Admiral," Officer Trell called urgently. "Massive human attacks have erupted worldwide." Cross rushed to the tactical display. Red dots flashed across the planet's surface, simultaneous uprisings in every occupied territory. "They're desperate," he concluded. "Commit our reserves to crush these attacks once and for all." For the next hour, reports flooded in from across the planet. Imperial forces engaged human fighters in cities, forests, deserts, and mountains. The humans were taking heavy losses, but fighting with suicidal determination. "Sir," reported a sensor officer, "we're detecting unusual activity in their oceans." Cross barely glanced at the report. "Probably their sea vessels moving troops. Focus on the main battles." It was exactly what the humans had counted on. Thomas Reed watched from the small submarine as the special missiles launched into the dark ocean water. Similar launches were happening from submarines positioned around the globe. The missiles shot to the surface and then into the sky, accelerating at rates that would have killed human pilots. Imperial ships in orbit noticed too late. "They're trying to shoot them down," reported the submarine captain. But the missiles are too fast and too many. In orbit, the missiles detonated, releasing clouds of tiny drones. Each drone was barely larger than an insect, making them nearly impossible to target. They swarmed toward the Imperial ships, attaching to hulls and emitting the neural disruption signal. On the flagship, Admiral Cross suddenly clutched his head in agony. All around him, Imperial crew members collapsed in pain. The neural network that linked the entire Imperial force was now their greatest weakness. "Shut it down," he screamed, though few could hear him through their own pain. Shut down the neural network. But it was too late. From the highest admiral to the lowest soldier, every Imperial fighter was incapacitated by the signal. Ships drifted in orbit, their crews unable to control them. Ground forces lay helpless as human resistance fighters swarmed their positions. For the first time since the invasion began, the humans held the advantage. And they used it mercilessly. Imperial High Command was in chaos. Reports from Earth painted a disastrous picture. 20 ships lost, thousands of troops captured, and Admiral Cross himself taken prisoner. The once mighty invasion force was in full retreat, with only a handful of vessels escaping Earth's gravity well. Grand Marshal Vorn, the Empire's highest military authority, faced the Emperor's hologram with trepidation. "This is unprecedented," the Emperor said, his voice dangerously calm. "How does a pre-FTL civilization defeat our most advanced battle fleet?" Vorn cleared his throat. "Your Eminence, our initial analysis suggests several factors. First, we gravely underestimated human adaptability. Second, they reverse-engineered our technology at an alarming rate. And third," he hesitated. "Speak freely, Marshal. Third, they fight differently. Imperial troops are trained to follow precise orders through the neural network. When that network was disrupted, our forces couldn't adapt. Humans, however, are accustomed to fighting with incomplete information and changing conditions." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "You sound almost admiring, Marshal. Respectful of their capabilities, Your Eminence. To defeat an enemy, one must understand them." After a moment, the Emperor nodded. "Assemble a research team. I want to know everything about these humans. Their biology, psychology, history, everything. If they can defeat our military, perhaps they have other value to the Empire." On Earth, celebrations were tempered by the enormous destruction. Major cities lay in ruins, millions had been displaced, and the death toll was staggering. But humanity had survived, and more importantly, they had won. In what remained of the United Nations headquarters in Geneva, world leaders gathered to plan Earth's future. "We've captured thousands of Imperial soldiers and crew members," reported Robert Hayes, now General Hayes of the United Earth Defense Force. "Most importantly, we have Admiral Cross and several high-ranking officers." "What about their technology?" asked the Chinese president. Dr. Thomas Reed stepped forward. "We've secured intact ships, weapons, and communication systems. Their FTL drive is undamaged. With time, we can adapt it for our own vessels. So we can reach the stars," mused the American president. "But should we? The Empire is still out there, and they're surely planning revenge." Thomas shared a glance with Maria before speaking. "Actually, that's not quite accurate. Based on our interrogation of Admiral Cross, the Empire has never faced a defeat like this. They're more likely reassessing than planning immediate revenge." "Which gives us time," Robert added. "Time to prepare, to build, to learn." The Russian leader frowned. "But eventually, they will return. And next time, they won't underestimate us." "Perhaps," said Thomas. "But there's something else we've learned from studying their biology and psychology. Something that might give us a different kind of advantage." In the laboratory beneath the ruins of London, now rebuilt as the Central Research Facility, Thomas Reed studied the brain scans of their Imperial prisoners. Maria worked at a terminal nearby, comparing the alien neural patterns to human ones. "It's remarkable," Thomas said. "Their brains are physically similar to ours in structure, but the neural pathways are incredibly rigid. Maria nodded. Their entire society is built on conformity and hierarchy. Their biology reflects that, or perhaps caused it. They literally can't think outside the box the way humans naturally do. And that's why they couldn't adapt to our tactics, Thomas concluded. Their neural network works perfectly when everything goes according to plan. But when faced with the unexpected, they fall apart, Maria finished. The door opened, and General Hayes entered with a small group that included Admiral Cross, under heavy guard. The Imperial officer looked diminished without his uniform, but his eyes still burned with pride. "Admiral," Thomas greeted him. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." Cross glared. "I was not given a choice." "Actually, you were," Robert corrected. "We don't force prisoners to cooperate. Unlike the Empire, from what we've learned." This seemed to confuse Cross. "Why would you give an enemy commander choices?" "Because that's what humans do," Thomas explained. "We value individual thought and decision-making. It's the source of our adaptability, the quality that defeated your forces." Cross was silent for a moment. "What do you want from me?" Thomas gestured to the brain scans on the large display. "We want to understand. Your people and ours are not so different biologically, yet our societies couldn't be more opposite. The Empire values order and control. Earth values freedom and innovation." "Chaos, you mean?" Cross snorted. "Your planet had hundreds of nations fighting each other when we arrived." "Yes," Robert acknowledged. "And yet we united against a common threat. That's another human quality, cooperation in the face of danger." Maria stepped forward. "Admiral, we've studied your neural network technology. It's brilliant for coordination, but it suppresses individual thought. Was it always this way in the Empire?" Something flickered in Cross's eyes. "Uncertainty, perhaps. I don't know. The historical records don't speak of a time before the network." "Would you like to try something?" Thomas asked carefully. "A temporary neural relaxation. It won't harm you, but it might let you experience thought patterns more similar to ours." Cross looked suspicious. "Why would I agree to this?" "Curiosity," Thomas suggested. "Isn't that valued in the Empire? Understanding your enemy?" After a long moment, Cross nodded once. An hour later, Cross sat in stunned silence, the neural relaxation treatment complete. The rigid patterns of his thought had been temporarily loosened, allowing new neural connections to form. "Are you all right, Admiral?" Thomas asked gently. Cross looked up, his eyes wide with wonder and confusion. "I see things differently. So many possibilities I never considered. Is this how humans always think?" Robert nodded. "More or less. We call it creativity, imagination, innovation. It's natural to us." "The Empire," Cross began, then stopped, struggling with concepts that had never occurred to him before. "The Empire fears this kind of thinking. It's unpredictable, uncontrollable. But powerful," Maria added. "Powerful enough to defeat your invasion." Cross looked at each of them in turn. "You could kill me. Kill all your prisoners. Take our technology and attack the Empire while it's confused. Why don't you?" It was a genuine question. The concept of mercy toward enemies was as foreign to him as free thinking had been moments ago. "Because we're human," Robert said simply. "We can be violent and vengeful, yes, but we can also choose compassion and cooperation when it serves a greater purpose." Thomas leaned forward. "Admiral, what if there was another way? What if Earth and the Empire could learn from each other instead of fighting? Your order and stability, our creativity and freedom." For the first time since his capture, Admiral Cross showed something other than contempt or pride. He showed interest. "The Emperor would never agree," he said, but his tone lacked conviction. "The Emperor hasn't experienced what you just did," Maria pointed out. "But you could show him, couldn't you?" A seed was planted. A dangerous, revolutionary idea that would change the course of two civilizations, and it began with one Imperial Admiral experiencing, for the first time, the human factor. 6 months had passed since Earth's victory over the Imperial invasion force. In that time, humanity had made extraordinary progress. Using captured alien technology, they had built their first true spaceship with faster-than-light capabilities. Named Unity, it represented the combined efforts of every nation on Earth. On the bridge of this historic vessel stood General Robert Hayes, Dr. Thomas Reed, and Maria Chen, now Dr. Chen, head of xenobiology. Beside them, looking uncomfortable but resolute, was Admiral Cross. "Are you sure about this?" Robert asked the Imperial officer. "Once we reach Imperial space, you'll be considered a traitor." Cross's expression was calm, calmer than it had ever been before the neural treatments. "I'm sure. The Empire needs to change. I've seen another way now." The Admiral had spent months working with Earth scientists, experiencing regular neural relaxation treatments. With each session, his thinking became more flexible, more creative, more human, and he wasn't alone. Many of the Imperial prisoners had volunteered for the same treatments, with similar results. "Final checks complete," announced the captain. "FTL drive is ready." Robert nodded. "Take us to the coordinates Admiral Cross provided." The stars blurred as Unity made its first jump into faster-than-light travel, carrying humanity's representatives to the heart of the Galactic Empire. The Imperial capital was a massive space station orbiting a red giant star. Its gleaming spires and towers housed billions of beings from hundreds of conquered worlds. At its center stood the Imperial Palace, where the Emperor awaited the strange delegation from Earth. The Emperor's advisors were divided on how to respond to the humans' request for an audience. "It's clearly a trap," insisted Grand Marshal Vorn. "They seek revenge for our attempted conquest." "Then why come with only one ship?" countered Counselor Lat, head of Imperial Science. "Our scans show their vessel is impressive but lightly armed. And why would Admiral Cross cooperate with them if they meant harm?" The Emperor raised a hand, silencing the debate. "We will meet these humans. Their defeat of our forces has earned them that much, but security will be at maximum." When the human delegation entered the Grand Audience Chamber, Imperial guards surrounded them. Thomas found himself staring at alien architecture that seemed both beautiful and oppressive, everything designed with perfect symmetry and order. The Emperor sat on a floating throne at the chamber center. His species was the same as Cross's, but his robes and cybernetic enhancements marked him as different, elevated. "Humans of Earth," the Emperor's voice echoed. "You have requested this audience after defeating my invasion force. Speak your purpose." Robert stepped forward. "Emperor of the Galactic Empire, we come not for war but understanding. We defended our world, yes, but now we seek something greater than victory." "And what would that be?" the Emperor asked, his tone making it clear he expected demands for reparations or surrender terms. "Partnership," Robert replied simply. "Earth and the Empire have much to offer each other." Murmurs spread through the Imperial court. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Admiral Cross," he called. "Step forward." Cross moved to stand beside the humans. "My Emperor, I ask that you listen to what these humans propose. I have lived among them, studied them. They are not what we thought." "You appear changed, Admiral," the Emperor observed. "Your manner of speaking, your very posture is different." "I am changed," Cross acknowledged. "The humans have a technology, a treatment that allows for neural flexibility. It has helped me see beyond Imperial conditioning." The Emperor's expression darkened. "You've been brainwashed." "No, Your Eminence," Thomas interjected, stepping forward despite the guards tensing. "We've done the opposite. We've removed the brainwashing that Imperial neural networks impose." Before the Emperor could respond, Maria activated a holographic display showing comparative brain scans. "This is an Imperial brain under normal conditions," she explained, pointing to the rigid neural pathways. "And this is the same brain after our treatment. The natural connections that were suppressed are simply restored. The Emperor studied the images, his expression unreadable. And what benefit does this treatment provide? Creativity, Cross answered. Innovation. The ability to solve problems in new ways. The qualities that allowed humans to defeat us. A tense silence filled the chamber. Then Thomas spoke again. Your Eminence, may I propose a demonstration? Allow us to administer the treatment to a volunteer from your court. You can observe the results yourself. The Emperor considered this. Finally, he nodded toward one of his advisors. Counselor Lat will volunteer. He has always been curious about new scientific discoveries. Counselor Lat looked nervous but stepped forward. Under careful supervision, Maria administered the neural relaxation treatment. The court watched in tense silence as the imperial scientist sat with closed eyes, the gentle hum of Earth technology surrounding him. When Lat opened his eyes again, the change was subtle but unmistakable. The rigid formality in his posture had softened. His eyes moved differently, taking in the room with new awareness. Counselor, the Emperor prompted. Report your experience. Lat seemed to struggle for words. I feel. Clarity. Questions I never thought to ask are suddenly obvious. Solutions to problems we've struggled with for centuries seem clear now. He turned to the Emperor with an expression of wonder. Your Eminence, this technology could transform the Empire. 3 days of intense negotiations followed. The Imperial Council was divided, with many fearing the implications of neural flexibility spreading throughout their rigid society. But others, including the Emperor himself, saw the potential. On the final day, the Emperor made his decision. The Empire has conquered worlds through force for millennia, he announced to the assembled court and human delegation. But never have we encountered a species that defeated us through superior thinking, rather than superior technology or numbers. He rose from his throne, an unprecedented gesture that sent ripples of shock through the court. Today marks a new chapter in imperial history. Earth will not be conquered. Instead, it will join the Empire as an equal partner, the first world ever to do so. Their neural technology will be studied and adapted for voluntary use throughout imperial space, and a human delegation will join the Imperial Council to provide their unique perspective. Robert, Thomas, and Maria exchanged glances of amazement. They had hoped for peace, perhaps a treaty. This was far more than they had dared imagine. After the ceremony, Admiral Cross approached them in a quiet corridor. You've changed the course of galactic history, he said. The Empire has never known defeat, never compromised, never seen the value in diversity of thought. Until now. We just showed you another way, Thomas replied. Your people chose to embrace it. My people were trapped in patterns of thinking we didn't even recognize, Cross said. Just as your people were divided before our invasion united you. Maria smiled. Perhaps we needed each other. You needed our creativity. And you needed a common enemy to unite your world, Cross finished. Though I wish the cost had not been so high. As Unity prepared to return to Earth carrying the historic treaty, Robert stood at a viewport looking out at the imperial capital. Thomas joined him. So, Thomas said, humanity's first galactic alliance. Not bad for a primitive species. Robert laughed softly. The Galactic Empire targeted Earth, and humans made them rethink everything. Beyond the viewport, ships from 100 worlds moved through space.